From the Oklahoman newsroom, this is an OSU update. I'm Jenny Carlson. The Cowboys are well into spring practice now up in Stillwater, and Scott Wright joins us on the phone to talk about some changes that the defense is undergoing. Scott, we know obviously change at the top with Jim Knowles taking over, but now we're starting to see some impacts of his role now as the defensive coordinator of the Cowboys, some players moving positions. What do you know about, especially as it relates to the secondary? They obviously lost some seniors from that secondary, Trey Flowers, prime among them, looking to fill those roles. What do you know about that secondary and guys that might be moving around?
Well, that's the interesting part, is because they lost 3 of their top 4 safeties, and they put in a defense now that adds a 3rd safety to the mix. So that's been the interesting thing. Obviously, taking out a linebacker position out of the 4-3 that Glenn Spencer ran. So one of the interesting moves of this spring has been Kenneth Edison Magruder, who was a safety that they beefed him up to get him into that what they called the star linebacker role under Glenn Spencer. Now he is slimmed back down a little bit, and he's back at a safety type spot. It's really a strong safety type of position that's going to allow him to get down in the box and be physical and use some of those linebacker skills still. But he'll be in coverage a lot more than he was. Get to cover some tight ends and some bigger receivers. But that's one of the interesting moves. Now, Calvin Bundage, who played that same position, is staying at linebacker. He's actually beefed up and is weighing about 220 pounds right now. And I asked him if he was feeling that on the field, and he got this big smile and says, "I feel like I'm 180 out there right now." He is really excited about his physical status right now, and so he has moved to that other outside linebacker spot where Justin Phillips was playing. Now Justin Phillips is back, and he's pretty happy with his move as well, moving back to the middle linebacker, which is where he feels most natural. So it's some interesting shuffling of the pieces around, but talking to everybody involved, they are all really happy with it right now.
Well, Scott, you bring up that linebacker group, and obviously that's a big area because Jim Knowles sees defense in the way that they should be aligned differently than Glenn Spencer did for a long time. So where those guys are going to play is going to be an interesting. It's going to be an interesting change. You mentioned Bundage, Justin Phillips. Those guys are going to be used differently. How tough of an adjustment do you think that's going to be for those guys?
I don't think it's going to be too difficult, because I think that Phillips, like I said, he prefers to be in the middle. I think that he is most at home, and with his side-to-side speed that he showed playing on the outside last year, I think that he has a chance to really be a force. Now the interesting thing, once you get past Phillips and Bundage, you've got the depth that you were building for 3 linebacker positions, now playing just 2 linebacker positions. So you've got a lot of added depth now. You've got a guy like Patrick Macon coming in, who was a redshirt after coming in from junior college last year, who's a true middle linebacker at 6'3", 240. You're going to find out what he can do in the middle. You got Kevin Henry coming back from that ACL injury. Devin Harper, who was a special teams guy last year and got in some. You got a lot of guys, and Eamon Ogbongbemiga, who was really coming into his own at that middle linebacker spot. You've got a ton of guys now involved, guys that you can rotate in and get some rest for some guys, and that is really going to be the big change, I think, at linebacker. Not only how they're used, but the fact that they've got a lot more depth all of a sudden than they were probably expecting to.
Hey, Scott, lastly, as we talk about defense, an area that for a lot of years was a real area of concern, defensive line, has now become almost like an afterthought. It's become an area of strength. It's become an area of great depth. Do you foresee them making a lot of changes, or is that just going to be sort of business as usual up front for the Cowboys?
Yeah, I think I don't see a lot of changes. The only differences will be in how Jim Knowles wants to use those guys. They've still got some really strong depth. Now they've got to do a good job in the recruiting department the next year or two, because they've got a lot of juniors and seniors in those 2 groupings, both tackles and ends. So that'll be the most important part for them on the defensive front over the next year or two. But when you look at guys like Darian Daniels in the middle, who's really coming into his own, Jordan Brailford, who became a star at defensive end, Cole Walterscheid, who's been around forever, Jarrell Owens, guys like that. They've got so many guys who were forced into playing really early, and now they've got all this great experience, and they're able to draw on that. They're going to be in a really good situation there. They've got obviously Joe Bob Clemens has been around. Now you add Greg Richmond to the mix as another assistant coach. So that even strengthens that group even more. And I think that Richmond's going to play a key role in the recruiting process as well. Everybody thinks he's going to be a great recruiter for Oklahoma State. So I think up front you're going to see things continue to blossom.
All right, lots of things to pay attention to as the Cowboys really get underway with spring practice. That spring game out there on April 28th, so a few weeks left. We'll continue to have coverage as things evolve in Stillwater, so be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.